President Buhari on Monday signed the COVID-19 Regulations No.2 of 2020 into law. This is to give a legal backing to the stay-at-home order imposed on Nigerians. According to the powers granted the president by Section 3 and 4 of the Quarantine Act, he made the following regulation. First, extension of restrictions, cessation of movement in Lagos, Federal Capital Territory, and Ogun State for another 14 days. All the responsibilities of government officials, citizens and residents contained in the COVID-19 Regulations 2020 remain extant. All the exemptions under the COVID-19 Regulations 2020 remain as exemptions under these regulations. Well, joining me now is a lawyer and social development advocate, Jide Ologun. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast. Quickly, talk to us. I'm certain that you would recall the controversies generated by the COVID-19 regulations before this No.2. And now that we have the No.2, first, I'd like to get your evaluation of how effectively we have been able to utilize the provisions of the regulations which stemmed from the Quarantine Act to actually address this issue.
The quarantine, the intention is to make people stay at home and try to embark on tracing and, of course, trying to test those who may have the symptoms for necessary attention and to prevent the spread. But as we have it now, the community infection is spreading, and again, monitoring how effective the order has been. I was in Ogun State yesterday and going around Lagos. Nigerians are beginning to come out because they are complaining that as good as it is for them to stay at home, what about the livelihood that we keep them at home? And that is why the government also is coming up with some palliative measures. For example, we understand that those who will benefit from the financial intervention are probably those with about 5,000 naira as their bank balance, and those who charge their phones with 100 naira, looking at the urban poor. And when you put all this together, I think we still have a lot more to do. And going back to the history of quarantine itself, it started in Venice, where merchants coming into that community are held back on the waters for 40 days. And that's where you even derive the name quarantine, to ensure that they are not bringing infection into society. And I believe that it was not envisaged that a time will come when a whole community we have to be locked down. So the federal government has a lot to do now because the welfare of the people is coming to the front burner. People are willing to stay at home, but in a country where about half of the population is within the poverty bracket, it may not be easy to keep them at home. So we expect that more should be done in ensuring that there's an effective compliance, because even in the Federal Capital Territory, there are reports that people find it difficult to stay at home. And again, in the course of this stay at home, there's a report that about 18 persons have been killed through law enforcement. So, and we just have about 10 days from COVID-19 itself. So we need to balance all this and ensure that we amplify the welfare of the people as a form of governance policy. Because in comparison...
All right. Okay. Before we look at how we balance all that you have mentioned or talked about, let's look at how governors of the states can domesticate this powers, because they are empowered to make certain decisions without recourse to the government, the federal government, so to speak. So what can they do now? They understand the states and what the state needs. What can they do at this point? We have 2 weeks at hand to really address these issues from your point of view.
The basic issue here is livelihood. If you ask me, I would like to stay at home for 3 months. If the government can provide for me, or there's provision coming from somewhere. So Nigerians are not saying they are not willing to stay at home to prevent the spread. to keep the social distances and all the directives. But that how do I stay at home without food? I was going to give you a brilliant example. It's not only in Nigeria that people are being quarantined. It's happening in the US also, across the world. In the case of the US, as at yesterday, I got a phone call of somebody who got $1,200 alert from the government without having to go and lobby, and that is the COVID-19 stimulus. And for a child in that family, $500. And for those who have filed for unemployment, $600 per month. I mean, that should be enough to keep anyone at home and relax. But when people cannot support their livelihood at home, support their wife, their children, and they will be compelled to try and come out at a risk to find one or two businesses to do. And that is the case we have in Nigeria now. And of course, we have also admitted that quite a number of the so-called vulnerables, they earn their living on a daily basis. So keeping them away for 28 days will not be an easy thing. So the government should scale up the efforts in either getting materials down to them that we keep them at home. And we are talking about food. Thank God that I think in Kano State there's a report that electricity is improving. That's what we've been saying. If in Nigeria we have 24/7 power supply, people can find their ways around it. So there are a lot of issues we must put together ahead of crisis management. And I think this appears more like a reactive crisis management template. For example, you asked about what states can do. Some states are not locking down. I will isolate the case of Cross River State, where Governor Ben Ayade said, no, I'm not going to lock down my state. I will lock out coronavirus. So he emphasized not allowing coronavirus to come into the state. In fact, at a point, he had to go and stay with the security agents at the border community overnight to encourage them and giving food to the vulnerable, and that, okay, you must do your business because as we are protecting you against infection, you must protect your livelihood. So you can go around, but you must wear a face and nose mask. In fact, as earlier this week, he gave some of the civil servants may return to their work because for him, I mean, hunger is another thing that is tearing the nation after COVID-19. So you must ensure that as you are trying to save people from the virus, you also deliver them from the livelihood virus that may cause greater poverty in the land after COVID-19.
All right, at this point, let's look at how we balance everything that you mentioned earlier in terms of persons who are violating, and then the issues of, you have talked about deaths with regards to those who violated and somehow were killed in the process. But how do we balance everything such that the purpose of government with regards to every measure is being put in place is not undermined?
If you look at Section 14, subsection 2 of the Nigerian Constitution, 1999 as amended, it says that the security and the welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. And here we are now. Even the law enforcement agents that are sent out there to go and implement the laws, how are they coping? You need to get close to them to know that some of them are bitter also. So we need to rejig our governance system to make welfare provisions available. And I have always emphasized it, and I'm challenging Nigerians this morning, whether you are in the government side or the governed side, go and Google Section 16 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended. You will see it clearly stated there that the government should manage the economy in a way that will deliver maximum benefit to the people. Happiness, affordable housing, food, they are all there to care for the people. So when we care for the people, we'll be able to manage crisis better. And these are the complaints that we have. And talking about the resources, do we have the resources? Yes. I'm glad now that my government is now realizing we need to upscale the health sector of the country. Look at the Prime Minister of the UK. He was tested positive to COVID-19. He was treated all through within the UK there. We need to come to that level. And COVID-19 is telling us now that please fix your local community. Globalization is taking a new look now. It may no longer be fashionable to be running abroad. So how do we now deploy our resources and ensure that Nigeria is great? And can you imagine the 11 trillion naira we spent on PMS subsidy in 6 years? How that would have gone in developing whether the education sector, the health sector, and revive the economy. We fix our electricity and things like that. So I think the government should look inwards now and maximize the capacity we have. And like I mentioned earlier, you talked about food security.
All right.
Go and check what is going on in Cross River State, check what is going on in Ogun State. Some states are trying to catch up, look at Kebbi State and things like that, and let the government harness all these efforts. And let's come out with a stronger brand of United States of Nigeria after COVID-19.
All right. Jide Ologun, thank you so much for speaking with us.